Hi, how you doing? Justin here. Today we are checking out minor pentatonic pattern 2 and pattern 3 in fourths. Now, before you start on these, you definitely should have checked out the lesson on pattern 1. It's really important that you've got the concept and you've got the idea of rolling your fingers over to get to those same notes that are on the same fret on adjacent strings. If you haven't got that together yet, you definitely shouldn't be checking out this video. And even though I'm teaching you pattern 2 and pattern 3, I would recommend that you learn pattern 2 first, get that down, put it into practice, like get using it, find some licks and ways of incorporating it into your playing, then learn pattern 3. I'm just combining them into these videos so the videos don't get too many little short videos over on the website or whatever. As usual, you'll find patterns and tabs and stuff like that over on the website, so do check that out. If you're on YouTube, there'll be a link in the description. If you're on the website already, it'll be a link under the Google ad to get your download of those things. So let's crack into it in a close-up. So before we crack into doing the fourths, let's just revise the scale pattern. So this is the minor pentatonic scale pattern 2. The lowest root note, which I strongly recommend you start and finish on, is here on this 7th fret of the 4th string. I would strongly recommend that you're totally hip with playing that scale up and down before you even think about trying out these melodic sequences. So anyway, the first one, playing it in fourths now. First finger is going to roll over to play the next string. We've got little finger, going to third finger, all simple so far. Back to the first finger. The obvious choice there is the second finger. Then you don't really have any option here except to use third and fourth fingers, okay, which is kind of a unusual movement, very cool one though. Then first finger is going to roll, well, it's going to step up here to the 8th fret and roll over, and then third finger does the same thing on the 10th fret. Okay, so it's going up from the root note so far. We got this. Now going back down, of course we're going to start a little flatter, roll onto the tip, the third finger, then the first finger. Now, there's the root note, and it's very commonly played with the third finger if you're doing any of this kind of bluesy things. It's very common to end up with that finger there. However, if you start with that and play the next note, and then the next note, you're stuck now because you'd have to jump like that with your first finger, which is really difficult. So it feels a little counterintuitive, but you're going to have to step there. Little finger, third finger, second finger, first finger. Okay? You just kind of have to. Or you're going to have to do a jump there with the first finger. I must admit, in the real world, I might end up doing something more like that and not going this fourth finger. So a little bit, these exercises are sometimes kind of technically getting your fingers used to doing stuff, but in the real world you might not end up doing that. But I would recommend practicing that fourth finger, third finger, second finger, first finger, third finger, fourth finger, first finger, does the little roll. Now we've got another little kind of awkward section here. Little finger, I really struggle to roll with my little finger on those thicker strings, right? So I do, and if I'm using little finger, it's more of a step than it is a roll. Okay, I'm going to show you a way around that in a second. But that is the way, generally speaking, I'm doing that little skip over with the little finger rather than the roll. But there's another, it depends on where I am on the neck as well. Quite often from here, I'll use my third finger and roll, first finger, roll, third finger, roll, first, second, which is, you know, it's kind of wrong. And I'd be back on little finger there again. So these are things, you have to make these decisions, right? If I'm practicing this as an exercise where I'm practicing playing the scale up and down the whole pattern, this is the fingering that I'll be using. But that said, I'm really giving serious thought to changing the fingering on this lower part and giving a bit more practice to using my third finger. So this would all stay the same. But here, third finger. Just seems to kind of make more sense to me that way, and I'm much more I'm much more likely to use the third finger than I would. It just feels a bit weird for the little finger to do that. It might be, I've got a really short little finger, right, compared to the other. So I find those kind of things a bit awkward, but we all have things like that. That's not like a sob story. I see comments all the time, oh, my finger doesn't work this way or it doesn't bend that way. You know, we're all different. We've got to figure out the way that works really well for our own hand. It's really important. So now we're on to pattern 3. Here's the scale, straight up and down first of all. Notice already there's variations with here, little finger some people prefer to use. I often use my third finger on the way down instead of little finger. So already with this scale up and down there's a few variations that you may already be aware of. The choices for this one when you're playing fourths, again, it's kind of obvious and it's kind of not. It just depends on how your hand feels. I would be going third finger, flat, second finger, first finger, okay? That's already a bit weird to skip from that with the third finger being quite flat to reach back. It's not ideal, but it works for me. First finger, third finger rolls, first finger, second finger, third finger, fourth finger. So you see we've already got now this same movement that we had in pattern 2, but they're separated by an extra fret. First finger, little finger, third finger. Okay, so third finger roll, second, first, third roll, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, roll, 4, 3. All of this last part's just first and third fingers. I really like pattern 3. It's one of my favourite parts of the pentatonic scale. A lot of people don't get on with it because some of the fingerings can seem a little bit awkward at first, but a couple of things just to think about, like things like this. As an exercise when you're playing a scale, that's fine, but I mean, just the real world doesn't seem to feel like that under my fingers. If I'm playing... So there are lots of here, third finger, second finger. Here, second finger, third finger. And it's quite unlikely that I would do that as a, you know, unless if I really heard the line in my ears and I was, you know, hopefully my fingers would find out where it is, but remember, it's music at the end of the day, and while practicing scales and practicing these patterns is really useful, you also want to think about how you might use this stuff in the real world, and then maybe at the end of a practice session, you know, have a go at using the idea in a creative way, not just keeping it as a scale thing that you've learned, but, you know, as I was just mucking around with then, see... See what comes out. So I hope you've got those under your fingers now. It's really important that you figure out how to put them into practice. Now, the way that I approached it when I was learning these things like 20 years ago is I practiced them as a full exercise first of all, got them under my fingers, but then I figured out some licks that I kind of made up my own licks that used them in a way that kind of felt nice to me, that I could kind of work into my playing to find a way of actually directly injecting the idea into my playing, because if you keep it as an exercise, it'll help with your finger dexterity and it'll enable your fingers to reach for notes that it might not normally have done so. But I think if you kind of treat them as little sections that you can put into licks, I think that you'll find that an easier way to incorporate these ideas. So do think about doing that as well. Make up your own licks, nothing wrong with that, particularly with these kind of little exercise ideas. I think it's a little bit more of a musical approach than just strictly with a metronome doing these things up and down, you know, which can get a little bit tedious. I've done it, but and I know, and it is kind of important, but you know, always better to have fun with stuff, hey? So anyway, get those down and I'll see you for another lesson where we'll check out patterns 4 and 5. See you soon. Bye-bye.